Hello and welcome back to the workshop. In this video I'm going to start working on my next project for YouTube. This will be a YouTube series that will cover the restoration and conservation of this clock. It's a rather interesting clock. It's a musical Longcase, and it's by a local maker, local to me here in Ellesmere in Shropshire. The maker is Richard Bullock of Ellesmere, and there's special interest in our family. My father has collected clocks by Richard Bullock for many years. I've always known a Richard Bullock ticking away in their family home, so it's an interesting clock to me, and I'll enjoy working on it. It's a rather interesting clock, being a musical clock. It's rather grand for a provincial maker, and as far as we know, it's the only clock of this sort of status, of this grandeur and complication that was made by Richard Bullock. So that in itself is interesting and has sent me down a little bit of a rabbit hole trying to do some research into that. So stay tuned to hear more on that. But I think in the first instance we'll go and have a look at the clock as it stands now, as it's come into the workshop, and see what needs doing and take a quick look at it. So here's the clock in question, and you see what I mean by how grand it is. You can see the scale of it with me next to the clock. It's a considerable height clock. It would have been in a very grand environment originally. Lucky in this room at the moment to have such high ceilings, but we need to think about what's going to happen with the clock in the future as to where it can actually be housed, the height of it. It's an incredibly high quality case. The case is all figured mahogany, and in some instances it's solid, in others it's veneered in different areas. It has blind fretwork here, and is a sort of lancet top shaped door, and it's very reminiscent of Gillow's work. I'm not sure if it actually is by Gillow's. It may well be. I haven't found any indication to prove one way or the other, but it's certainly of the right style and the right quality and the right materials. It's not the original case for the movement, and I believe that the movement probably would have been put into this case when this case was made new, and the movement originally would have been in an older case. That may well have come about as part of the refit of a library perhaps, or somewhere, a room within a stately home where this clock was originally made for. And that kind of thing did happen, where a whole room would be refitted by somewhere like Gillow's, by a firm like Gillow's, and they would do everything: clock, bookcases, desks, the whole thing to match. So I'm guessing that is probably the scenario, because it would be very difficult to find another case of the correct scale to put the movement in. So I think this case was probably made with this movement in mind. I'll bring you in for a closer view. You can see here the casework, the blind fretworks, and the lancet top shaped door. Interestingly, on this style of door, a corbel like this would be very prone to being snapped off when the door was open. So a nice little feature is that to save it from being snapped off, it's not actually part of the door, it's part of the trunk of the case. So that's I rather like that kind of detail. You can see that the movement has been in this case for some time, although, as I said earlier, this is not the original case for this movement. But you can see from the scale of the weights that it is a substantial case for a substantial movement. The mask here on the hood, that was probably fitted as a method of fitting the dial to the case. Such a grand dial mask is quite unusual, and I'm not quite sure what I think of it, but it's certainly going to stay in this instance, and it's part of the clock's history. But as I say, I suspect it's part of having fitted this movement into this case that dial mast came about. The hood though is very grand. I really rather like the carving, which is of extremely high quality. You can see the quality of the carving here on the hood, and also of the blind fretwork continuing on the hood here. This is not actually silk for letting sound out. It's actually, as I say, blind fretwork, so that's a sort of sign of quality. The sound, if you're wondering, comes out of the sound holes on the sides, again in a sort of a Gothic style, and these do have velvet backing or silk backing to let the sound out. Another nice feature of the case is these substantial columns, which are rather nicely done as sort of 4 columns made into one. So looking at the dial is an extremely high quality part of the clock. The engraving to the centre of the dial is superb. The maker is Ellesmere, which is in North Wales in England, for those of you who don't know, and that is actually where I'm standing now, where the clock is standing, and is certainly where it purports to have been made. And as I said earlier, I will go into a little bit more detail on some theories that I have about that, but this is certainly what I would call London quality, although it is a provincial clock. Just looking at the quality of the hands, for an example, these are original, and that is a London hand if ever I saw one. So I'm interested to piece the story together on this clock. So what I'll do now is to just take the hood off, and then we can have a little look at the movement. So here we go with the hood removed, and you can see the scale of the dial. If we nip behind, you can see the scale of the movement. I'll show more of the movement in just a moment, but I thought I would just give you an initial view of it straight after the hood's been removed. And I'll go on and remove the dial now so that we can see things in a little bit closer detail. The eagle-eyed viewers amongst you will have also already noticed that this hand's already removed and the collet is missing off here. That's because I've already had this dial off once. I couldn't resist having an initial look. So I will take it off now and give you a view of the front of the movement. Here's the front of the movement with the dial removed. And now you could really start to appreciate the scale of this movement compared to an ordinary Longcase clock movement. An ordinary Longcase clock movement is probably about that wide. So this is quite a lot more movement. And you can see here the bells, which I believe to be original. Rather nice nest of bells, and the hour bell, and then we've got the mechanism for the chime and strike, as well as the tune change and calendar work and motion work. It's had some repairs over the years, as you can see here, just from an initial look. We'll do something to tidy that up, but we'll cover that in a future video, and also soft solder here. I'm not a big fan of soft solder, but so we'll be doing something to try and improve those repairs. It's also had a slight modification made. You can see here there's been a blade spring running up here, and this is to do with the release for the tunes, for the musical side, for the musical train. It's all functioning as it should, and it's operating sprung differently at the moment. I'm yet undecided as to whether or not we'll reinstate the original mechanism or leave it as it is and just restore, repair, conserve as is. But I'll cross that bridge when I come to looking in a little bit more depth at the movement. One of the very nice features of this clock is the original pin barrel, which has all the original tunes just waiting to be unleashed and heard. So as soon as we have the movement in a condition where it can play the tunes well, that's exactly what I'll get it to do. This spring is really lovely. This is the return spring for the musical barrel. This pumps the barrel and holds it in against its engagement so that you get the correct tune playing. And that's a really lovely handmade blade spring there. I wouldn't particularly want to make that, so I'll try my best to look after it. And this is the other side of the movement. You can see here, this is what that spring is pushing the barrel up against. And this is registering the position of the barrel so that it plays the appropriate set of pins against the tails of the bell hammers. So I think the next thing will be to take the pendulum and weights off and get the movement down out of the case, take it over to the bench and have a closer look. The weights are a fairly chunky set. This is the going weight in the middle, strike to this side, and chime. The strike, they've added a great lump of lead here. I'm not sure why it needs that at this stage, but I will. I'll look into it. It might be that when problems with the movement are sorted out, that it doesn't need that anymore and that I actually have to remove that lead, but we'll see. It may also be that these weights aren't original to the clock at all and that they were doing that just to make it work properly. But I do suspect, looking at them, particularly with the size of this one, that they're certainly old anyway. They're certainly made for a clock such as this. It's got a musical train, because you don't get weights this size normally. So they may have been made in cast iron purely because of the amount of lead that would have been required. So here are the parts as I've removed them. The pendulum bob and the pendulum, which is rather nice and original. Here's the dial as removed. And one of the first things that I'm going to be doing with regard to the restoration of this is I'm going to be taking the rolling moon out just to get the paintwork tidied up. This whole restoration is sympathetic. In certain areas you're probably not going to see very much difference. Certainly with the dial, I'm not going to do very much to the look of the dial because I think it's really beautiful as it is, and I certainly don't want to gleam it all up and polish it all up like new, because I think that would really spoil the clock. But areas of damage to the paintwork, I think, you know, chips and scratches are worthy of getting sorted out. And here is the movement. And sitting on the table here, you can begin to get an impression of the scale of it. As I say, the cylinder is wonderful and in good condition. Some of the hammers are feeling a bit sorry for themselves at the moment, but that's all work that will be addressed. But I'm really excited about getting stuck into this project. So that's probably where we'll leave it for today. So stay tuned, and I'll bring you part 2 very shortly. I'm going to try and do these videos quite speedily, like this, in a fairly sort of unedited format, because to be perfectly honest, the editing takes a long time and I enjoy the content. So hopefully you will feel the same way, and that you appreciate the content rather than the glossiness of the video. So we'll go with that for now anyway. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.